Hello and welcome to another video tutorial Monday. This week I'll be showing you how to do Watercolor Resist. First, I'm going to start out with this watercolor paper. I've just cut it down to about 4 inches wide. Didn't worry about the vertical dimension because I'm going to be cutting out a heart shape anyways, but I wanted to keep it to that 4-inch size. And I'm taking this love stamp from this polyclear set by Hero Arts called Hip Hip Hooray. And I'm just going to sketch this heart out onto this piece of watercolor paper. And I just go over it until I think it looks about right. You're going to be cutting it out anyway, so it doesn't need to be exactly perfect. You can always make it look a little bit better when you cut it out. But we're going to use this as a guide for stamping with our versamark. So I'm going to take this love stamp and I'm going to stamp it around the heart, trying to keep it, it's really hard to see where you've stamped it previously, so you kind of have to keep that mental image. So I'm just trying to go across the heart and fill it up where I think it would look the best, trying to stagger it, and I'm going off the edge a little bit here, but that's okay, because I'm going to cut it out anyways, so it's kind of nice to have it go off the edges, since 1 or 2 wouldn't fit perfectly the entire way of the heart. So I'm just kind of staggering it and trying to fill up the whole shape. And then when I emboss it, I'll see where the areas are that I need to fill up. And that should be pretty easy to do. So I'm going to add some silver embossing powder. I just keep it in this container. I'm just going to sprinkle it on. And then I'm just going to make sure I get every area covered. And as you can see, there's definitely some powder sticking to the piece of paper. It's water paper, so watercolor paper, so it has a big tooth to it. So I just went back with a paintbrush and brushed off the excess. And then I embossed it, and you can see it's actually kind of cute. There's a little area right there that seems perfect for a little love you. And this is from Sophie Sentiments from Lawn Fawn, which I use like way too much, but it added that perfect little touch. So now it's like love, love, love you. And now I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the heart. I want to erase those lines because once I add watercolor to it, those will be hard to erase. So I'm going to erase them after I cut it out. And now I'm just going to put it on some parchment paper just to protect my work surface and help clean up later. I just keep this Tupperware of water on my desk. And it's nice that I don't have to run to the kitchen every time. All the color from previous uses kind of settles to the bottom. So it's good for a couple uses. I change it like every week. And I'm just using my favorite watercolors from Prang, the red, orange, and the red. And I'm just going over making sure there's lots of pigment on there and kind of letting it pool up in areas and really make it look like a watercolor effect. Which is really the cool part of this, because, I mean, you could do this with Distress inks, and it would look great, but it would look different, and I wanted to emphasize that difference. So it's going to curl up a little bit, but that's okay. You can just go over with the paintbrush. Watercolor is a very forgiving medium, and it's so imperfect, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. So I'm just going to go over that, making sure all the areas are like I want them to be. And then I just simply dab off my water brush and put it right back in the container and just put it away. And that's what I love about these pan watercolors, is that since they're in the pan, it's literally that easy to clean up. I don't have to worry about tubes or wiping off surfaces or anything like that. So I just set that aside to dry and got started on the other part of my card. And I intentionally did that first so that I wouldn't have to wait too long for it to dry. Because watercolor loses some of its vibrance when you use a heat gun. So I just applied some washi tape. This is from Pretty Tape on Etsy. I'll link to it in the subbar and in this blog post. And I just striped it across using 3 different colors, and I'm going to go back and weave it. So I'm just sticking it down really well on the left side and really well on the top, And then I'm just going to go and peel up every other layer and lay the tape down. And it's really simple, easy to do because this tape is low tack. It doesn't rip up the card at all, but it has just enough stick to actually stick when you want it to, which is why I love this. I love washi tape so much. It's so forgiving, and yet it's not so unsticky that it doesn't actually stick. So I'm just finishing up this last little layer here, and as you get further down the card it becomes easier because the tape is naturally kind of stuck down by the previous layers. So this is just the last layer, and as you can see it's not quite even on the right side there, so I just went through and peeled back the tape and then cut off about 1/8 of an inch to make it even. And yeah, I wouldn't suggest using your paper trimmer to do that because I want the tape edges to wrap around the edge. It helps make that nice clean edge, and that way you don't have any adhesive sticking off the edge. So you can see I'm just kind of folding it over there because it's tape. It's just so easy to use. You just fold it over like that. And even these corner pieces just stick right down. If you have one that doesn't stick quite as nicely as you'd want it to, like that one, I just add an extra piece of washi tape because it just kind of adds to that handmade look. So there's the finished card base, and it's just nice handmade touches like that that really make this card look great. So now here is my heart. This has only been drying for about 5 minutes or however long it took me to do the weaving. So as you can see, it's mostly dry. I just needed to touch it a little bit with the heat gun, and now it's ready to go. And I'm going to add a little bit of vintage photo distress ink to the edges just to make it a little bit more distressed and look like a little bit of a patchwork heart. And I'm liking the look on that, so I'm going to add some foam dimensionals and just stick it on the card. And if you find that it's hard to stick down with the foam dimensionals because it's sticking to the washi tape, you can always go back in with some glossy accents because that will stick the foam to the tape if necessary. I didn't have much issue with that, but one side of the heart was coming up a little bit, so I might go back later and add some glossy accents to make sure it sticks. Now I just went around the outside of the card with vintage photo ink to add that distressed look and decided that I wanted to do some stitching around the outside. So I'm just taking my mouse pad, the same one I used before as a cushion to stamp on, just the back of it, and I'm using it to punch holes through with my tonic hole piercer. And now I'm going to go back and just use this cream thread to go around the outside. And my plan is to tie a bow at the end, which I usually allow for because I don't count the number of holes around the object that I do, and it really bugs me when I end up a little bit off and end up with the same hole meeting up. So I just tie it in a bow because it makes it look better, and I thought that was a pretty appropriate thing for this card. So I've made it all the way around the card, or actually not yet. I'm taping down the end with some washi tape. Honestly, if I would have thought ahead a little bit more, I would have left a longer tail so that I would have room to make a bow with. But you'll see what I do to fix that, just in case you're in the same situation. So I'm just going to go around the card now, just simple in and out with every hole. And I tried to make a bow here, but it didn't quite work because the end was too short. So what I'm going to do instead here is actually go back, and I just put another piece of thread through and tape them both down with washi tape. So I have my original end and this new piece of thread, and then that way I have two longer ends to tie in a bow. I mean, it's not a perfect idea. I wouldn't do it every time because it involved threading another needle, but it works and it lets me make this cute little bow on the card. And after a little bit of adjusting, You can put a dab of glossy accents to keep this bow in place, by the way, especially for mailing. And then here's the final card. So really simple card this week, just using watercolors and embossing powders to make this handmade little card. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again next week.